First up, Mark in Mesa, Arizona. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just had a couple of questions for you.
Sure, go ahead.
I am in high school, and I go to a Socratic-based learning school, so we just discuss topics during history. We go to a class called Humane Letters. It's a 2-hour-long period of literature and history, and we're studying Greek philosophy and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have, we were discussing the concept of objective morality, and I was against it because I think that morality is subjective based on society. And it got to the point where, out of the classroom, I was discussing with another student whether or not the Bible and the religion of the Catholic Church could actually promote morality or give its own morals. And she was trying to convince me that without church, she wouldn't be moral. She wouldn't have to say someone was raised.
So you've got a friend who's a non-believer who is convinced that without church or religion there would be no grounding for morals?
Well, she is a believer, I think, but she's very on. I mean, I feel like she's on the cusp.
Okay.
And I was just curious. Sorry, I'll let you go.
No, that's fine. I disagree with you on whether or not there are objective moral standards, but that's a big, long discussion that we don't need to go into at the moment. This idea that you need religion for morality is one that's pervasive, but I wonder what the demonstration that it's true is. Because my position is that, I gave a talk, which you can find online actually if you Google superiority of secular morality, and I've since had to revise that further because it's not that I think that secular moral systems are superior. They're the only moral systems I think we actually have because I don't find that religions are moral systems. They're moral pronouncements that this is right or this is wrong with no real mechanism for people to figure out why something is viewed as right or wrong. And so, so I don't, I would have to know exactly what her reasons were and what's convinced her that, you're not going to have, it seems to me that you can build a moral system, and I'd recommend going ahead and Googling for that because I kind of outlined this, but off very simple principles. If morality is about well-being, and we are physical beings in a physical universe, then there are truths, real truths about what is beneficial for us to our well-being and what is detrimental, both as individuals and groups. And so given those facts, if that's what morality is, if that's what we're talking about, and if we're not, then I'll need a new definition because that's what I'm talking about, then I have no good reason to think that religious pronouncements about morality have anything to do with our well-being. There's no demonstration of why a claim from a religion actually benefits us, and no reason to think that even if there's a God who's making pronouncements that he's actually correct.
And that's what she's doing. She's basing it on the Bible and the fact that atheists don't have a rule book.
Okay, so what does she think about homosexuals?
I think she's more lenient on that. I don't think that she follows the Bible strictly on that, but she does follow it strictly on a lot of other things.
What about slavery?
I'm sure she's against it, though the Bible's for it.
Yeah, so if she's going to point to the Bible and say that this is the source of morality, and yet she's going to reject it when her own senses, her own understanding of what is right and wrong conflict with it, then stop pointing to the Bible and stop pretending that it's where you're actually getting your answers from. In fact, what she's doing is saying, I really don't know what the answer is on this, so I'm just going to accept the Bible's answer until somebody demonstrates that it's wrong. That's not any way to work through a moral system. I don't know. Do you have?
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I got to bring up Euthyphro. Are you familiar with the Euthyphro dilemma?
No, I'm not.
Look it up. It sounds like your class is a place where that information should be available to you. It's Plato talking about Socrates again, and the basic question is. Socrates asks this character Euthyphro, are your actions that you're so proud of claiming that they're moral, are they because the gods say so? Are they moral just because the gods say so? Or are they inherently moral and the gods are just instructing you that they're moral? Right? And that raises some troubling questions for almost every Christian I've ever met, right? That because if it's just made up pronouncements, then that's not really morality. We understand that just because a big, powerful guy says so doesn't make a thing right. But if they're inherently moral, and the God is only instructing us, then really morality is something outside of the gods, and it dethrones them entirely as lawgivers.
Because they're inherent, we don't need them to
Right.
establish them for us.
Right.
Yeah, if something's moral because God says so, then God could say the exact opposite tomorrow and say as what's in the
Right,
Bible that
right.
slavery's okay when we know it's not.
Neither prong of the dilemma is really satisfactory to most Christians, and now they often try to get out of it by doing this bait and switch to God's nature, saying that, oh, well, he didn't just make them up, it's his nature, right? And it's inherent in his nature. Well, then the next question is, where did his nature come from? If he authored his own nature, then once again, it's just his pronouncement. If he didn't author his own nature, then once again, he is not the source of morality. Morality is just inherent in the universe.
Yeah, it's I'm with Jeff when they try the it's God's nature. Well, great. Then either then God Himself becomes irrelevant to the discussion, or you've basically just moved the question back one step.
Right. They try to move the goalposts back. You can take the goalposts right back to them. So bring that up. It basically it makes it really difficult for Christians to cling to the idea that morality could come from their God's commands in the first place.
Which is also potentially an absurdity anyway. That the idea. I mean, when I talk about morality, I'm mostly in line with Sam Harris. I'd recommend The Moral Landscape. I don't necessarily agree with everything in it, but I'm by and large in line with. If we're going to be talking about this, what we generally mean is we're talking about well-being, and that is the sort of thing about which fiat declarations have no bearing. You know, drinking battery acid is bad for pretty much everybody. Even if you find somebody who can drink battery acid, that doesn't change the fact that as a general rule, it's bad for you. And it didn't take anybody's pronouncement to actually discover that or make or change the truth of it. There's an aspect of this that, well, I'll just leave it at that. And if you had a follow-up question, go ahead.
Another thing, I was talking to my father, and I was pulling examples from the Bible of how if God really is condoning a lot of these actions, he's a really mean guy. I mean, slavery, you get stoned for being sexual, you should kill your children if they're bad. I mean, and then I was pulling these up, and he believes in the Bible, but then he's saying to me, well, can you prove God said these things? Can you prove God condoned these? And I'm saying, of course not. They're the invention of man to condone this.
That's kind of unusual. I mean, you know, he believes it, but he doesn't necessarily believe it. It reminds me of when we had Ray Comfort on the show, and Ray said that he didn't agree or didn't believe that everything in the Bible was true and accurate. And I thought that was a big admission on his part, but it then leads directly to the question of, okay, how do you go about determining what is true and accurate? Because I fully admit that there are true and accurate things in the Bible and in the Quran and in pretty much any book you want to point to. Even in some high fantasy, they point to real truths about behavior.
It's just not true because they're in the book. It's just true because it's true.
I would ask a believer who wants to weasel out of responsibility for passages like that by making the claim that, well, only some of the Bible is God's revealed word, right? Only some of it is accurate and other bits aren't. They can't get away from the fact that for, almost 2,000 years, those passages were descriptive of what their religion was all about. They can poo-poo them now, but they are continuing a belief system that not only believed those things to be true, but they were like core beliefs of the religion for many, many centuries. Yeah. So to just discard them like that and not take any responsibility of the path their religion has taken to get them where they are now, I think is worth looking at.
Yeah, this pick and choose mentality, this kind of revisionist, we're going to do a new interpretation. They've offered no mechanism for how one can determine what is and isn't reliable. They either
No.
simply make assertions or appeals to faith, and I have no use for either.
Yeah, and they only seem to pick out the things that don't sound completely crazy anymore.
Most of them.
Yeah.
I hear there's going to be a new TV show covering the snake handling preachers, which I will definitely be watching. But you know, you can't paint everybody with one large brush
So
either.
is it
we
like a
talk
reality
about,
show?
Yes, it is a reality show.
Really?
There's
Yes.
also one coming out about rich preachers.
Yeah, there is one about.
You just know the producers of the show about snake handling are desperately hoping there'll be some bites.
There are bites. You'll see bites.
Oh, good grief.
But anyway,
that is good TV.
The thing is, I want to make sure you don't necessarily paint with a broad brush, because just because somebody happens to use the Christian label, that doesn't mean you know anything at all about which category they fit in. There's everybody from the Reverend Barry Lynn, who I'm happy to work with on church-state separation issues, to the speaking in tongues, snake handling, let's not go see a doctor version.
Pray over our children.
Yeah, it's kind of over the top. But I appreciate the call, and check out, not to necessarily promote only my own stuff, but since you called to get my answer, there's an actual lecture out there, Superiority of Secular Morality, that gives my thoughts on it, and also I'd recommend Sam Harris's book, and there's a few others too. Richard Carrier's got a book out on morality. Michael Shermer had a book out on the science of good and evil. And these are all interesting takes on the big questions about morality.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad I got on the show.
Thanks, Mark. Have a
Bye.
good day.